Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something powerful: how to take the real moments of your life and turn them into stories that other people want to read. Not made up stories, true ones. Stories that actually happened, shaped with care, so they feel alive on the page. Every single one of you already has material. You don't need to invent a dramatic adventure or wait for something huge to happen. You already carry small, true moments with you. Moments from this week, from last month, from years ago. A conversation that stuck with you. A quiet afternoon that felt bigger than it looked. A time you felt proud or embarrassed or surprised by something ordinary. Those moments matter. They're yours, and they can become strong writing when you learn how to shape them. Here's the central idea of everything we'll explore today. Real experience can become powerful narrative without inventing what did not happen. You can tell the truth and still craft a story that holds a reader's attention. That combination, truth plus craft, is what we call creative nonfiction. By the end of our time together, you'll be able to do four things. You'll be able to define creative nonfiction clearly. You'll understand the honesty contract that every true story writer keeps with the reader. You'll see how the angle you choose, whose eyes we look through, can change the feeling of a moment without changing the facts. And you'll practice turning a handful of bare facts into a short scene that shows rather than just tells. Before we go further, I want you to do one small thing. In your mind, or on a scrap of paper if you have it, call up one small true moment from the last few days. It doesn't need to be dramatic, it only needs to be real and specific. Hold on to that moment, and we'll come back to it later. You already know more about storytelling than you might think. You've been listening to stories and telling them your whole life. Today, we're going to name what you already know and give you tools to use it with intention. Are you ready? Let's begin. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. I'm going to take a few true details from right here, right now, and shape them into a short scene. Nothing invented, only what's real. The classroom is quieter than usual. Afternoon light comes in through the west windows and lands in a long rectangle across the third row of desks. Someone's backpack strap hangs off the edge of a chair and swings a little every time the air moves. At the front of the room, the teacher stands with one hand resting on the back of a chair. He's been talking for several minutes, and now he pauses. She looks He looks towards the windows for a second longer than necessary, then back at the class. He smiles, but the smile arrives a half beat late. All right, he says, let's try something. That's it. A few true details arranged with care. Did you notice what happened? I didn't tell you a big story. I didn't explain anyone's feelings in a long paragraph. I just selected certain facts and put them next to each other. The light, the swinging strap, the pause, the delayed smile, the simple sentence. Those details begin to suggest something. Maybe the teacher is tired. Maybe he's thinking about something else. Maybe the quiet in the room feels heavier than usual. You start to wonder. That wondering is the beginning of a story. Now, look at what I did not do. I did not invent a dramatic argument. I did not add a student who wasn't in the room. I did not claim the teacher was heartbroken or furious when I had no way of knowing that. I stayed inside what could actually be observed or reasonably inferred from the surface of that moment. The facts remain true. The arrangement made them feel like a scene instead of a report. This is the heart of the demonstration. The same true material can sit there flat, or it can be shaped so that a reader's imagination leans forward. The difference is not invention, the difference is selection, order, and a little restraint. When you leave one small thing unsaid, when you show the delayed smile instead of explaining the feeling behind it, you invite the reader to participate. That invitation is part of the craft. Try noticing the difference in your own mind. If I had simply said, the teacher was distracted and the room felt quiet, you could have received information. When I showed the light on the desk, the swinging strap, the pause, and the late smile, you received an experience. One version reports, the other begins to tell. So here is the first practical lesson. Creative nonfiction starts with real details. You choose which ones to place on the page. You decide the order. You decide how much to explain and how much to let the reader discover. You do not get to invent the events themselves. The power comes from working inside the truth, not from stepping outside it. In a moment, we'll look at what happens when we take the exact same facts and look at them through a different pair of eyes. For now, sit with this idea. Ordinary true moments already contain the raw material of story. The writer's first job is to notice them, select carefully, and arrange them so that they begin to move. Now, watch what happens when we keep every single fact exactly the same, but change the angle. Same classroom, same afternoon light stretching across the third row, same backpack strap swinging slightly off the chair, same teacher standing with one hand on the chair back, same pause, same delayed smile, and same four words. All right, let's try something. But this time, we'll look through different eyes. Imagine the student in the second row who has been staring at that swinging strap for the last 2 minutes. From that seat, the light is brighter, almost sharp. The teacher's pause feels longer. When she looks toward the windows, the student wonders if something is wrong. When the smile finally arrives, it seems careful, as if the teacher is deciding whether to say more or and then choosing not to. The four words land differently. They feel like a door opening, or maybe like a door staying mostly closed. Nothing in the facts has changed. The light is still there. The strap still moves. The teacher still pauses and smiles a half beat late. Yet the feeling of the moment has shifted. One version felt quiet and slightly distant. This version feels more watchful, more uncertain, with more changed with small questions. That shift is perspective. Perspective is one of the more powerful tools a writer of true stories has. When you choose whose eyes we look through, you choose what the reader notices first, what the reader wonders about, and how the emotional temperature of the scene feels. You are not changing what happened, you are changing the lens. You can tell the same true moment from the teacher's point of view, from a student's, from someone standing in the doorway, even from the slight distance of a narrator who simply watches. Each choice highlights different details and creates a different experience for the reader. The facts stay honest, the coloring changes. This is important. Perspective is a creative decision, not a factual one. The writer is allowed, expected even, to choose the most effective angle for the story being told. What the writer is not allowed to do is invent new events or new people to make the angle more dramatic. The power comes from working carefully with what is real. So when you sit down with a true moment of your own, One of the first questions worth it asking is simple: whose eyes am I looking through? That single decision will shape almost everything that follows. So, what exactly is this thing we're talking about? Creative nonfiction. You've already seen pieces of it in the short scene we built together and in the way perspective can shift the feeling of a true moment. But let's name it clearly because once you have a solid definition, everything else becomes easier to practice. Creative nonfiction is a true story told with the tools of a good story. That's the heart of it. True plus crafted equals creative nonfiction, or I'll shorten it to CNF. The nonfiction part is straightforward. The events really happened, the people were real. You don't get to invent a fight that never took place or add a character who wasn't there. The reader trusts you on that point, and that trust is part of the bargain. The creative part is where the artistry lives. You still choose which details to put on the page. You decide the order. You decide how close we stand to the moment. You use scene instead of pure summary. You pay attention to voice and rhythm and the small sensory things that make a reader feel present. You can shape the material, sometimes quite artfully, without ever stepping outside of what is true. Think of it this way: a diary entry that simply lists everything that happened in a day is true, but it usually isn't shaped. A made up short story can be beautifully crafted, but it isn't bound to fact. Creative nonfiction sits in the powerful middle space. It stays honest about what occurred, and it uses every useful tool of storytelling to make that truth vivid and worth reading. You already know examples of this, even if you haven't called them by this name. When a writer takes one real afternoon, one real conversation, one real feeling of being 11 years old and sitting in a classroom that suddenly feels too small and turns it into a scene you can almost sit inside, that's creative nonfiction at work. The writer didn't invent the birthday or the teacher or the awkwardness. The writer selected, arranged, and paid close attention so that the true moment could breathe on the page. Here's what creative nonfiction is not: it is not a complete dump of every single thing that happened. It is not fiction wearing a thin disguise. It is not a dry report that only summarizes. It is a shaped narrative. It uses scene, specific detail, voice, and when it serves a story, honest reflection. I want you to try something simple right now, in your own words. Finish this sentence. Creative nonfiction is, keep it short, keep it clear. The exact wording can be yours as long as you hold on to both halves of this idea: truthfulness and craft. Because those two halves have to travel together. If you lose the truth, you've left the genre. If you lose the craft, you've lost the reason a reader stays with you. The best true stories do both at once. That's the definition we'll carry forward. True stories told with craft. We've talked about what creative nonfiction is. Now we need to talk about the promise that sits underneath every true story you write. I call it the nonfiction contract. It's simple and it's firm. Here it is. We tell the truth about what happened. We may shape how we tell it. We can choose the order, the details, the focus, the pacing, even the reflection. But we do not invent events, people, or major facts. That's the whole agreement. The reader picks up your work believing that the core of what you describe actually took place. In return, you promise not to break that trust. Why does this matter so much? Because the people in our stories are real: family members, friends, classmates, teachers. When you write about them, you are handling something that belongs in part to them as well. You have a responsibility to be fair. You also have a responsibility to the reader who is giving you their attention and their belief. And finally, you have a responsibility to yourself as a writer. Honesty is part of the craft, not something separate from it. Let me make this concrete with examples that fit the kind of writing you're likely to do. Acceptable shaping tools like this. You remember a lunchroom conversation that actually happened, but in the moment it felt scattered. When you write the scene, you tighten the order of the remarks so the exchange is clearer on the page. You choose the strongest sensory details: the sticky table, the too loud laugh 2 seats over, and leave out the ones that don't serve the moment. You add a sentence of honest reflection and about how you felt afterwards. None of that invents, all of it shapes. Unacceptable invention looks different. You create an argument that never occurred because the real afternoon felt too quiet. You add a friend who wasn't there to heighten the drama. You change the ending of an event so it feels more satisfying. Those choices cross the line. They break the contract. Do you see the difference? One set of decisions works inside the truth, the other steps outside it. Now, memory itself is imperfect. We all know that. You might not remember the exact words someone said 3 years ago. In those cases, the honest move is to stay close to the spirit of what was said, or to signal that you're working from memory and simply to write the parts you do remember with care. What you don't do is invent a more convenient version and present it as fact. This contract is non negotiable. Everything else we practice, scene, detail, perspective, reflection, rests on it. If the foundation is solid, the craft can be ambitious. If the foundation cracks, even the most beautiful sentences won't hold. So when you sit down with a true moment of your own, you can ask yourself a quiet test question: am I still inside what actually happened? If the answer is yes, then shape with confidence. If the answer starts to drift toward, well, it would be better if, pause. Come back to the real material. It's almost always stronger than the invented version anyway. Truth first, then craft. That's the contract. And it's the ground we stand on from here forward. All right. You've heard the ideas. Now let's put them to work with your own hands. I'm going to give you a small set of bare facts. Nothing fancy. Just a handful of true details. And your job is to turn them into a short scene, one paragraph, while staying completely inside the nonfiction contract. Here are the facts. It is a Tuesday afternoon. 2 students sit at the far end of a long cafeteria table. One is wearing a blue hoodie with the sleeves pushed up. The other is picking at the edge of a paper tray. Between them sits an unopened chocolate milk. The first student slides the milk an inch closer to the second and says, "You can have it." The second student doesn't look up. After a few seconds, the second student pushes the milk back and says, "I'm good." The first student nods once, then starts gathering their own trash. The cafeteria noise continues around them. That's all you're allowed to use. Setting, 2 people, a few actions, 2 short lines of dialogue, and the ordinary sounds of the room. Nothing else may be invented. Now, before you write, make a few deliberate choices. First, Choose a perspective. Whose eyes are we looking through? The student in the blue hoodie, the one with the paper tray, someone a few seats away who only catches pieces of this exchange, a quieter narrator who simply watches. Each choice will change what the reader notices and how the moment feels. Pick one and stay with it. Second, decide which of the given details you'll bring forward and which you'll let sit in the background. You don't have to use every single fact with equal weight. Selection is part of the craft. Just don't add new ones. Third, aim for scene rather than summary. Instead of writing, they offered each other the milk and then decided not to share it. Try to put us at the table. Let us see the sleeves pushed up, the finger on the edge of the tray, the small movement of the carton. Showing keeps us present in the moment. And fourth, this is the contract again. Stop short of inventing. You may not give them longer speeches than the 2 lines that I gave you. You may not add a third person. You may not decide that one of them is secretly angry or heartbroken unless the facts themselves support that inference through the action and detail. Stay inside what is here. Now, you're going to complete this exercise and write a complete paragraph, which is 5 to 7 sentences long, with true details only, clear perspective, as much showing as you can manage. Let's bring the threads together. Creative nonfiction is a true experience shaped by craft. That's the simplest and most useful definition we can carry. You take what really happened and you use the tools of storytelling, scene, detail, perspective, careful selection, to make it vivid and worth reading. You do not invent the events themselves. Perspective is one of the strongest tools you can have. The same true moment can feel entirely different depending on whose eyes we look through. The facts stay honest, the coloring changes. That choice is yours to make with intention. Underneath all of it sits the nonfiction contract. We tell the truth about what happened. We may shape how we tell it, but we do not invent people, events, or major facts. The contract is non negotiable, everything else rests on it. And here's the encouraging part: strong, true stories often begin with small, specific moments. A conversation at a cafeteria table, a pause in a quiet classroom, a detail you almost overlooked. You already possess material, you have been living it. The work ahead is learning how to notice those moments, select from them carefully, and shape them with both honesty and skill. Later, we'll look more closely at how to choose a strong focus, how to build a fuller scene, how to handle dialogue drawn from memory, and how to add reflection that deepens a story without preaching. But the foundation will not change: truth first, then craft. You already know more about storytelling than you might have realized when we began. You've been listening to stories and telling them your whole life. Today, we simply named some of the tools and put a few of them in your hands. The real moments are already yours. Now you know you can shape them carefully, honestly, and with purpose. That's where we begin. Thank you.